As Black women, we have been bound by ideas told to us, ideas that were strong suggestion that were not to be veered away from, ideas that stifle our creativity and limit us to boxes. These ideas mold us into the societal view of perfection for who or what we should be. We have been told in not so many words that our bodies are not our own, and so we treat them as such. Well, it's time for us to reconnect to ourselves. Join me as I gather with friends and professionals to talk about the many facets of Black pleasure. This is part of our healing and the discovery and exploration of who we are and who we desire to be. There is liberation in pleasure. Let's journey on this pathway together.
I want to know, let's set the foundation. No questions about it. What does pleasure mean to you? And then let's go to what does sexual pleasure mean to you? Because that's really what we're here for. Well, we're here for a lot of things, but the list.
Just keeps going.
If I stay here, we'll never leave, which is also fine by me, but I know we have lives to live. So anybody take it. I'm not going to look at anybody, whatever you like to do.
For me, the answer of what is pleasure is so simple. It's freedom.
Yes.
Pleasure is freedom. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about the answer to that question, and I was a little upset at myself that I didn't have a more in-depth answer. And then I backtracked, and I'm like, no, it really is just freedom. The freedom to be and to feel everything. So that's my definition.
I love that.
Thank you.
You all are so supportive. I kind of want to walk around with you all in my pocket. How much better would life be? Right? If we all just kind of walk together.
It has something complex. I just kept thinking it's an experiential, something. And then you said freedom. I was like, oh.
But it is.
That's right.
And to experience it fully. With just being able to just be in it with your full present self. So when I think about pleasure, I think about being present. Yeah.
I like that
Yeah,
too.
present. Yeah.
Freedom, present. Okay. Yeah.
Fullness is I think the pieces that I thought of when you were speaking. And I guess this is one of the reasons we have to talk about as Black women is because we are expected to live in compartments and not ever come into all of the parts of ourselves. And so I think this is an aspect that it really reminded me of Audre Lorde's quote about self-care and how self-care is an act of a political warfare. But I mean, that is utilizing and inviting pleasure is again one of the ways that we care for ourselves and our spirit so that we can become full as we are, and then also have the courage to experience some of these shadow things, the hard stuff, the sad stuff, because we know that none of it, even the pleasure, doesn't last forever, and neither do these pieces either. So it's a fullness for me. Yeah.
You said something important that I want to go back to, but leave space for you to answer if you have something. But to fully care for ourselves. And as Black women, I feel like you said the compartmentalization or of everyone trying to put us into some type of box, but we also don't allow ourselves to fully take care of ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So pleasure becomes this anomaly, pleasure,
Who got time for that?
Who has time for it?
Because we haven't been able to take care of ourselves, right?
absolutely.
As women, and then as Black women, it's even compounded. We've had to take care of everybody else. We had to take care of our kids, the master's kids, the master's wife, to make sure that she's not coming in and killing all of us because of jealousy, right? We literally take care of the world. So if you are spending your time taking care of the world, how in the world can you take care of yourself? There's none. So it has to be an extremely intentional act of, okay, this is for me, this is about me.
For sure. I want to go back to what the definition of pleasure is, sexual pleasure, just if there's any definition that comes to mind.
Let's do it.
It's a luxury item.
Yes. And I've been seeing a lot of talk about Black luxury and in talking about this conversation of pleasure, initially it started off as Black luxury in my mind. And I'm like, this is not it's not a luxury. This is an everyday thing that should happen because my white counterpart gets to do all the things that feels good for her all the time. And I don't, you know, or I haven't allowed myself to. So,
and not to veer too far off, but I think it's more than more than a not allowing yourself, because we spend so much time defending ourselves. In every aspect, right? Because if we do something that's I had a conversation with a good friend of mine recently, and she's like, I'm tired of Black people talking about Black luxury. And I'm like, why are you tired of it? We've never experienced this, right? So now the conversation is me defending why Black people, Black women need luxury, as opposed to saying, let's just, you know, experience luxury. But I mean, that happens, I think, in every avenue. We're just too busy defending ourselves because whatever we're doing, for some reason, someone thinks is wrong. Maybe even everybody else is doing it, but the Black woman is doing it. There has to be a problem. So we can't even sit in our space and enjoy unless we block the world out and say, you know, this is, I don't care what you think. I'm gonna do it anyway.
And then how do you find pleasure when you're tired?
That part.
So,
and so I just want to add, because I love the question of how do you find pleasure when you're tired, and my mind immediately went to masturbation, and then it immediately went away from masturbation, because there's something that you said, and I cannot recall what it was, but you can't masturbate because you're gonna go to hell, right? Because I mean, and hopefully, I'm thinking all of us around this table maybe have stepped away from that just a little bit. I mean, literally, I've counseled a few women, married women, who would be literally in a corner shaking after sex with their husband because they were so indoctrinated that sex is bad, don't do this, that they couldn't even enjoy it as married people, right? And I don't want to, you know, say that my stance is only have sex when you're married, because I'm not saying yay or nay to that, but
I think for me, this things that the definition, I guess, of sexual pleasure, maybe not the definition, but one of the mediums or one of the benefits of sexual pleasure is getting to know yourself in a whole nother modality, in a whole nother way, to hone some of the tools that you might not just use within your sexual realm, that you can use externally as well. But this goes along with this, like if you don't experience sexual pleasure, or at least have a modality or a platform to talk about it or talk with others about it to get more familiar with it, how are you going to know even yourself to the fullest? And I just feel like even that helps us to even become better spiritually, because if you can understand how you are loved fully, then you can embrace yourself fully as well.
And you're not looking for somebody else to tell you who you are.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Oh my God.
So many things. So many things, because I don't think we realize just how much we are policed by gender roles that are also being policed by other females. Because I think we're so used to like blaming other men for like what we do, or like, yeah, you know, if men told us that we can't do, like men are policing our sexuality. Whereas like if we really think about it, women police other women. 100%. And so it's kind of like, but then part of it is actually out of love and care, because they've been through things and they're just like, it didn't go well for me, so I'm just trying to protect you. And for a lot of people, it's fear of what could be, because, you know, but I think it's also the case of like, if something happens and you get pregnant, you will carry that. Or like even the idea of virginity, which is a whole nother issue, but you can look at her and tell if anyways, God, I'm getting heated in this school. But yeah, there's just so many things that a man, you can't really tell if he's done anything, but a woman is just so easy to be able to catch or to see, or the consequences socially are just detrimental. So think about how many times like somebody has impregnated somebody and the guy is out here still living his best life, and the woman had to drop out of school, change states, move countries, you know, like everything, you know. Then she comes back a year later talking about like, you know, I took a year off school. Nah, sis, we know what happened. You know, and it's just like, but it's just that if it weren't for birth control, like
No. I bet you have some stories.
No, I mean, like, where would a lot of people be? Where would a lot of people be?
A lot of humans will be here, that's for sure. A lot more. So, mercy. Yeah. So I just think gender ideals are just the expectations of females and the social consequences are way heavier for us.
I wonder if we started having conversations with women, because we're talking Black women, when they're young, about the pieces of our body, and if you touch yourself here a certain way, you might feel pleasure. I wonder if women would make better choices about the individuals they partner with, because they know I can please myself by myself, so I don't need you for that. I just wonder.
I think it has to be bigger than that, though. It can't just be the physical pleasure, because I think we, in general, as women, we want the spiritual and the emotional connection as well. We want and also too, we got to get into the fantasy, right? Because women are sold this fantasy of knight in shining armor and Prince coming to save you, and you need rescuing, and all of that stuff is very problematic, because now we're centering our basic human needs on someone else, right? So then you add on, now this a person is supposed to be everything for you. They're supposed to be there for you when you give birth, and they're supposed to be there for you, you know, and take care of you in the bedroom, and
Meet all the needs.
and meet all of your needs, and it's just not true.
That's for both genders, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sitting as a doula with families, and I'm literally playing their therapist, and I'm like, this is not what I'm here for.
Same.
Like, y'all just got done in a heated argument. Now y'all come sit on the couch, and I'm like, what is all this steam? Let's talk about it. Okay, because we can't get to me caring for you as a doula until we fix this. So I just kept going back and going back and going back. And I was like, it's a relationship with self that we got to deal with this. And once we start dealing with that relationship with self, then we can start. I feel like pleasure is like, it's not at the top of the list. It kind of does feel like a luxury right now, where we are as a collective, as Black people. Because I don't even think men are experiencing pleasure. I think that they're also struggling with enjoying themselves. But we're not talking about that.
Because, I mean, we've given them license to go off and, like we said, be whatever, whoever, because this decision you've made won't potentially scorn you in the same way that it would a woman, which we know is not true. You still don't know what pleasure is for yourself. You're just doing the thing that you've been told is okay to do, and still have an experience like, who am I? Like, that question has been looming over my head for the last couple of years. Who am I? And the definition has changed. I talked about it before. The definition has changed. If you had asked me 3 years ago, I think I would have given you something really superficial. And maybe, I mean, that's what it was at that time. But now it's like, no, this is who I am. Like, this is who I am. And then someone said something about virtue. And I'm just...
It was both of them who
Okay.
started
Someone said something
going
about
in,
virtue.
kind of going
And then
in.
it's like, I understand the religious and cultural beliefs of some people where they are strongly tied to that. I get it. But like, beyond the virtue of what other people think, it is the virtue of ourselves. What is your worth caught up in? You know?
Not even from a morality standpoint, but like, think about how you're even potty trained, right? Like, you know, you tell your son, or you tell the boy, like, okay, here's how you hold it. This is where you're aiming it to. Hold your penis like this, do that. This is how you clean it. Like, you're teaching them all these steps. So there's ownership in holding it all the time. And then for the female, you're sitting down to pee. You can't really touch it much. If your hand is there too long, it's like, what are you doing down there? So it's just like, you quick pat, you go. Maybe they'll tell you like there's a way to wipe. Don't wipe this way. Wipe this way. But like that's it. You have it's not yours. It's something that's here that like helps you do things. But there's a disconnect because you've never been able to have ownership over that part of your body. Because how would you? You know.
And we were talking about projection earlier, but like how we don't want to. Sorry, how people may have received projection from those who are telling them, don't have sex and don't do this until you're married. In our family, it starts when they're very small. One of my children, one of my daughters did masturbate a lot when she was little. And I was very fortunate to have had a friend whose daughter also did that from the time she was like 8 or 9 months. She figured out how to pleasure herself in her car seat. So like we would have conversations like, how do you do this? This is so uncomfortable. Oh my gosh. First I thought, it's really cool. They're having the conversation. And then my daughter started doing it. I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation.
So cool when someone else is doing
Like, look at how progressive they are. But what it did do is when I had another daughter, then we started, my second daughter didn't do it like her sister did, but I would tell her, when you have that bath time talk, nobody should touch you in these places. Only you. These belong to you. This is your body. You have autonomy over your body. Probably didn't use autonomy, but, you can touch your body anywhere else. Anybody else who touches your body that makes you feel uncomfortable, no, that's not right. So even just giving permission when they're younger. And even now with my 13-year-old who she's just like, I don't want to talk about sex. I just try to be as open with my conversations about not just what sex is, but the varieties of sex and like opening the conversation, that self-pleasure is a thing. Having sex with yourself is a thing, which is my sexual education from my parents was on the week of my wedding. My mom dropped a tube of lube on my bed, and that was my education. That was it. Yeah, sure.
a tube of lube.
Right, exactly.
And why would I need lube?
Right.
Right?
Because you're not really in a pleasurable state.
Well, yes, but why? How would I even know that?
Right. How do I know my body would do that? I had no idea. Yeah. I had no idea what my body could do.
Something that's already ready to go? That sounds like a mess.
It wasn't revved up. She wasn't revved up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Who are you independent of being a mom, a wife?
Without the
Don't talk
titles
about
and the
your job.
labels.
Yeah. And when I tell you, people struggle.
They
Like,
do.
yeah.
They don't know.
And to your point, if we don't know who we are outside of these titles, how is it possible for us to experience any type of pleasure? We're just running around here living lives
With
that
hats
other people
on.
want us to live. Right? Who are you really?
Without these hats and these masks.
Yep.
Yeah, and most people don't even consider, they don't think about it like that. It's just what you do, and that's it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, isn't that how women are conditioned? You are a mother, you're a wife, you're a caretaker, and that's it. You can just be yourself, and you don't have to hide yourself behind these clothes.
But most of us, we have an idea of what bodies should look like. What type of bodies we're comparing ourselves to? Pray about it. But
Can I tell you, my Auntie Mava was not a small lady. She wasn't small.
Amen.
She was big and beautiful,
And
right?
she
like,
owned it.
And she owned it.
Yes.
So, and I think that, to your point, was something also that was amazing to me, because she wasn't this ideal body frame, right? Because we see that on TV. Oh, this person is a Coke bottle, whatever. They can walk around naked or in bathing suits and be fine. She was not that, and it didn't matter. But yeah, being comfortable with not having this ideal body either. I think that speaks to pleasure, right? Because if someone is constantly, or if people are constantly telling you that your body's not okay, how can you feel pleasure from your body?
Or you've never seen anybody else's. So like what you were saying, my experience is a little different because I went to boarding school. And I went to boarding school around, how do we say it in America? Like 7th grade till 12. And so I saw other people go through puberty with me. And I remember being like, her breasts are like, okay. Hers looks different too. Okay. But I can't imagine, like, if I didn't get and, you know, if they hear this, I was not looking at y'all like that. But it was just like the experience of seeing so many other females and they're in their full self, whatever that was at that time. We were all like teenagers. But I can't imagine if I never got to see anybody else except my mother. And if I'm comparing myself to my mother, we are not the same. We are not the same. And I can imagine like feeling like, oh, like, you know, like, dang, like, I don't have the hips that my mom has, or like, I don't have this. If that's what I'm constantly comparing myself to, or not knowing like, oh, okay, my lips look different than everybody else's. Maybe I'm supposed to have these intact lips that are just like, you know, just perfect, and they're just there, and your clit is just right here, and it's just perfect, you know, then I'll think that, oh, like, you know, if somebody else has a labia that's a little bit like longer, like fuller, then they're like, oh, there's something wrong with me, because you haven't seen other bodies that are not what you see on TV, you know, and so not having that exposure does create shame. I can't imagine growing up and all you have to compare to yourself in terms of like what you look like is media. Yeah.
But that's so many of us.
Yeah.
That, you know, it defines. I walked around in high school, middle school with a jacket on because, well, number one, a church lady told me I was fat. In not so many words. And if my mom says to this day, if she had known, she would have given me the permission at that point in time to literally cuss her out. So I always thought I was like the biggest one of the group. It turns out when you look at pictures from back then, I was average. They were very small. And it looked like I'm sure they were nourished, but it looked like they needed. Were they? It's a question. The specific question that was asked of me is, my daughter, I'll never forget this lady, what she said, God bless her, and her family. My daughter is struggling to put on weight. What do you do to hold on to so much weight? To essentially...
They're asking you? How do you know?
And I know I was young because I remember looking up.
Yes.
And this woman is not this tall as I'm an adult. Right. Looking up, I remember exactly where I was when this happened. And then I don't.
No, I was just wondering if you were looking up to pray to the Lord.
Not to Jesus, no, to her, because respect your elders. You can't say nothing. Yeah, and thus ensued the blue windbreaker jacket that I wore through middle school and high school, in the East Coast summer, 80 degrees, sweating like a bullet. You would catch me outside on the street with the windbreaker on there. I wouldn't take it off. For what? Again, the privacy, no one should see your body, and then, oh my gosh, someone saw my body and it's fat. Yeah. And that's not to be celebrated. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are the things that we endure and then have to unlearn. Yes. Yeah. The Black pleasure is unlearning. Yes.
For those of us that developed too early.
Oh, that's right.
Or
yeah.
There's that too. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And there's this feeling like you have to also cover it because you want to
keep the
male gaze away.
That's not my problem.
First of all, that's not our problem.
Yeah. No,
we know
Second
that.
That's not our problem.
You didn't know, but now we know.
And it's not even like, oh, I'm out here with like a tube top or something. It's like just being somebody that has maybe bigger breasts.
But can I feel like I have to? If you were out there with a tube top on, it's still
not your problem.
It's still not your problem. Yeah. As you're talking, I wasn't like voluptuous. Like, I'm not voluptuous now, which is fine. But I remember having issues because apparently I gave off too much sexual energy. And I'm like,
Black girls being fast.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But
let me write
can I please just tell you I was so slow? There was literally nothing fast about me, but there's something about my aura, my energy.
It's very engaging. It sounds
because
like.
you embodied the freedom.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Couldn't have.
But it was such an issue because I would, you have to cover up, I'm like, what? I'm literally just existing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in your
existing
fullness.
in my fullness, but somehow that is a problem.
I remember having a conversation with someone. I think it was something to do with my work, and she was explaining to me how she kind of grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and how for her in high school as a black girl, it was kind of like her white classmates would wear maybe the same exact outfit, but it was on her body, and because it fit differently, or I don't know what the expectation it was. I didn't grow up in the U.S., so I can't relate all the way, but there was this idea of like, oh, no, you can't wear that. It's too sexy.
Yeah.
And like her white classmates would wear the same thing, maybe even with shorter shorts, and like they wouldn't say anything. And she said that thing followed her for years, because it was like, what is wrong with my body? Like, why is my body so sexual?
Yeah. One of the directors said we can't promote her because her clothes are too tight, right?
What?
But the girl didn't wear tight clothes. She wore regular slacks. She just has hips. And I'm like, this is like literally one of the best workers you have, but you're not going to promote this black woman because she's hippie.
She's a distraction.
It's the policing of black bodies.
It
That
is the policing.
the point blank period. We're not allowed to be little kids because it's assumed that we're thugs then too, and we're going to kill people, our black boys. We're not allowed to be free as black little girls because we're fast or too sexual energy. We're not allowed to be adults as a whole. I mean, we could go down the gamut, but it doesn't stop at any. We're not allowed to be black trans because you're black. One, and then you're trying to be something that you're actually not. That's a whole other conversation. Like, at what point do we rise up and say, like, fuck all y'all? Our ancestors literally built this country. So why are you come off of my back? The policing should be done to you. You're lazy. You know, you're not
Because
doing
nobody
nothing.
wants to take responsibility for their individuality. So like something that's kind of been popping in my head, you know, like how women have to be responsible for how the male gaze, that like to prevent pregnancy. It goes back to what would happen if we educated men, not just about their own sexual pleasure, but what does it mean to pleasure a woman as well?
Ooh.
How might that show up differently? How might they show up differently for themselves?
I can't. This corner over here. I can't. I love it though. I love it.
But how might they show up differently in relationship? How might they, you know, I feel like when they can understand how literally magical our bodies can be.
And they can understand the concept of intimacy.
Right.
Oh, that's a whole other.
That's a whole nother conversation. We're not doing that
No,
today.
I love talking to men, especially when they say, I'm great at sex.
Houseway.
Oh my Lanza. Whenever they say that, I'm like, this is the exact moment when I know that you are terrible at it. Because if you are going around and thinking that everybody's body is
Responds the same
and
way.
responds the same, and everybody wants your pump done,
Pump it up.
then you, my friends,
You're in a bad place.
are in
You're
a
in a bad place.
place.
A bad place.
Yeah.
Or a place
Right?
that could use some growth.
Well,
Yes.
no one has ever
And development.
complained. I said these women haven't complained because historically women have been told to just sit down and bear it. And they're faking their way through
Especially
this.
if you out here bragging, like
That
who's gonna
part.
be like?
That part.
That one's faking it.
Yeah.
It's on the list.
Listen.
It's on the list.
Listen, that is a rule number 1. Do not fake it. Yeah. If you don't tell them, please stop this. We're done here.
How do we change the future of pleasure for black women, black girls as they develop into black women?
Sorry.
I want to bring this in because I feel like the answer lies in, I would say all of us grew up Christian in some type of religious household, and that played a big role. So knowing where we come from and where we are, how did we get there? Right. what steps did we take individually? And maybe we don't all have to just get in there and share everything, but like what liberated you? What made you feel comfortable to have pleasure? What made me feel comfortable to start allowing myself, giving myself permission? When did I start giving myself permission? I think like looking at it from that standpoint can help like lead the path for other people.
I think for me, I've always just done whatever I wanted to. Like, I got in trouble a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I did, because it's like my brain just has always been wired like, no, that sounds kind of ridiculous. I'm going to just do this other thing over here that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I fully understand that I'm a rare bird, right? People are afraid of getting in trouble or, whatever comes with things. So I personally don't know how to answer the question from that standpoint. But I've had conversations with my sisters, my, sisters, to talk to their kids, right? Like give your kids permission to have conversations about what certain things feel like, and not shy away from, oh my goodness, does this mean that they're about to go again broke out, right? Like maybe they are just trying to talk to you. And I remember when I started off as a social worker, I worked for Child Protective Services, and I dealt with babies a lot at the time. And you'd find babies like always putting their hand, and people like, oh my God, what's going on? I said, well, it's pleasurable, right? Maybe this baby is self-soothing. So teaching parents from even that, that early, that your kid is probably doing this, maybe they're stressed out and they're trying to self-soothe. Let it happen. And when they get a little bit older, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, rather than, no, don't do that. Don't linger there. You have a conversation with them and like, okay, yeah, sometimes it does feel good to do that, but these are the places where you can do that. These are the places where you can't do that. Please don't do this at school, baby girl. Right? Because I saw it when I was in kindergarten. I saw one too many penises.
Oh yeah.
And isn't it like these little boys are just whipping out their penises,
Yep,
but let a little girl hike up their dress, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, right? But I think the conversation has to happen with, like, obviously us in this room and with parents of young kids to say, hey, listen, it is okay if you tell your kid that it's okay to do this. And even if you're uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because the discomfort really is just, of course, it's internal.
So the full moon was a couple of nights ago, and I thought the full moon was on Wednesday, but it was actually on Thursday. So on Wednesday, I said an affirmation over myself that I am all, I am full, I am everything. And the moon and the light, like the shadow and the dark, it's all here. And I think more recently, I've been letting that like dark side come out. Because this, like, people pleaser who wants everybody to like me and wants everything to be right, like, that girl's, she not here no more.
No, but that's okay. It doesn't serve you.
Yeah, it doesn't serve me. And my relationships have really blossomed because of it. And just mostly with myself. So it feels good to sit in my skin, I love that. So
Who I am, I guess, is someone who loves to honor the space and the thresholds. And when we cross the threshold, we're ultimately stepping into the unknown. But that also brings great joy, can bring great pleasure, but also can be really full of fear as well. So what does it look like for us to kind of set that down or tuck it in our back pocket, because we never really separate from that, but not let that be the driver. And so I am a courageous Black woman, I think.
yes. And blossoming. Yeah. I left out of my room and went into the kitchen just to make myself something to eat. And I had forgotten she said she was going to be on there. And I hear these women, they're in their, I'm sure, 60s and 70s, and they're just going on. And I just had like a moment of such gratitude that I was a Black woman. And I'm hearing all of the things that the women say when they're in like fellowship and community with one another. And I was like, I miss that so much.
Here you
because
be.
It has been since before the pandemic that we all have been able to sit and share in this way. And So I'm just so grateful.
People are interesting.
Yes.
And I'm gonna blame slavery. That's what I'm gonna blame. That we have been taken so far away from our culture and going back to it when we've been indoctrinated to think a certain way is very scary to certain people, right?
It goes along with finding your voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
These recordings are in paid sponsorship with PeepShow Toys. PeepShow Toys is an immigrant-run small business focused on providing their community with body-safe toys made of non-toxic materials, inclusive and accessible to all.